Good morning, everyone. We're going to give just a minute or two to let all the participants join, and then we'll get started on this meeting. Shayla, do you want to let me know when it looks like we've slowed down?
Sure. Looks like they're still coming in. Okay, looks like we're holding steady.
All right. Well, I'm going to officially open today's meeting. It's April 3rd. Happy spring. And my name is Mary Farrell. I'm acting chair today. And I think we can get started with calling this meeting to order. And Shayla, would you like to do roll call of council, please?
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. For the record, today Councilmember Lee has been excused from the meeting. Acting Chair Farrell,
Present.
Councilmember DeFontorum,
I'm here.
Councilmember Mena,
Here.
Councilmember Rogers,
Present.
Councilmember Meehan,
Here.
and Councilmember Willard.
Here.
Quorum today.
Great. All right. So do we have any review and follow-up action items? I believe we do.
Yes, one moment. We had a few of items for ARH regarding ORCA comments and interest in the PSI accountability, and Natasha will include that in her presentation today. We also
Perfect.
have an item with our, Housing Stabilization Division regarding tribal funding. And that topic will be addressed by that section in a follow-up.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to mostly forego the report of the chair, other than to say that I'm looking forward to the consolidated plan presentation of our agenda. So I encourage council to really lean into that and ask questions. This will be a good time to learn more about that. And I will just defer to Director Bell for the report of the director.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, Councilmember Farrell, members of the council. It is good to see and be here this morning. Hope everybody is well. A couple of updates at the top. Maybe first I'll take just half a step back and go back to the follow-up action items just to both for my own memory and for the collective good of ours, and to make sure that our follow-up action is based on what the council insight and direction was. So as Shaloa mentioned, one of the follow-up items for the Housing Stabilization Division was that we would come back to have active and updated conversations as we are implementing the Tribal Housing Grant Program. I think we talked a lot about all of the work that it took to get us to this point, and also had a shared understanding that that was not going to be the pinnacle of near success or progress. And so I just want to make sure that folks know we will come back to both talk about what we're learning in the implementation, and if and how any of those learnings are prompting us to make any adjustments based on what we're learning from the tribes and as they're implementing their own plans. And if there are adjustments that we need to modify, that we can do that with a collective place of learning and understanding. So just to make sure that that was some specificity to the direction that I understood it. And so I'll take a pause now to see if council members' memory is consistent with what I've cited. And of course, if there's any vulnerabilities in my summary, you can correct me.
Any questions or comments from council on that?
Okay. We'll take that as our direction, and then of course, as feedback or direction changes, you can let me know. So few updates at the top. First, I want to just make sure that the council and members of the public are tracking where we are at in the process of filling council vacancies. We've had several changes over the last few months, and so just want to make sure that folks have visibility into where we're at and where we're going. So just by way of observing some of the changes, so in the last several months, I think there's collective awareness. Our former chair Hall passed away, which created one vacancy in the council. Maggie Harris transitioned off, which created another vacancy in the council. We also have Council Member Mena, who is up for reappointment. Just as a reminder, council members by way of statute can serve 2 terms. So Council Member Mena's first term will be concluding, and then he will hopefully be up for reappointment consideration for his second term. And then Council Member Lee is fulfilling the last several months of her second term, which will also create a vacancy on the council. Actually, I believe Chair Hall and Mary Lee's terms were almost identical. All to say, we have opened a recruitment that I think by way of formal process, I think the portal just closed down a couple of days ago. So you may have seen either through our own outputs and trying to make sure that there's collective awareness of the vacancies, but also the opportunities as members of the public, regardless of housing expertise and interest that people might have if they have thought about serving on a state council, particularly housing one, that there's ample opportunity to be able to do that. Between now and the next couple of weeks, we'll be reviewing those applications that get submitted. We'll go through and make sure that the council has just sort of broad awareness and that we're looking to see and be clear about where we might have gaps, both in terms of expertise, geographic representation, and opportunities to build out more robust and complete council, not only by way of positions, but also make sure that the full breadth of Oregon can be represented on this body. So we'll be going through those applications over the next few weeks, and then we'll go through the formal process where the governor will review that and make determinations by which since this is a governor-appointed council. In the series of decisions that will go to the governor for a decision, it will also be that of naming an incoming chair as well. So we'll be filling the vacancies and then also making sure that we have permanency in the chair. For folks that regularly participate in the council meetings, you may have seen from time to time, we've had a couple of our council members that have been willing and able to step into an interim chair role to make sure that we have continuity. And so we're grateful for that. And we also want to make sure that there's permanency in the role and that there is clear governance and accountability in terms of role, scope, authority. And so that as members of the public want to engage with the council, you can have clarity about how we get to decisions, who's outgoing, who's incoming, and that you can track that process based on the level of interest that you have. So all to say, by the end of this month, certainly in advance of the May council meeting, I will hope to have more concrete updates to share with council and members of the public about where we're at in that process. And then I would assume that hopefully, all things considered, if decisions are made timely, will be for Senate confirmation process as well. So just want to make sure we're taking stock of that. In the vein of taking stock, we are gearing up for the 2027-29 agency request budget. I think most of the council is aware that we are always working a year or more in advance by way of managing a biennium budget in the current state and also preparing for the next budget. I expect that over the next several weeks and months, we will start to have ramped up conversations and decision points both for this body and members of the public as we are preparing the agency request budget. Generally, when we bring those conversations to the council, it is under the vein that each budget cycle is unique. And this one we expect will live up to that mantra. It is no surprise that there is a host of federal changes that I think states and localities are all contending with that are going to prompt some real decision points, hard decision points, both for people across the state that are relying on many of the services that and programs that might be going through different changes, some in their final state, in the current version in their final state, and some in terms of forecasted changes that we see on the horizon, but also the reality that the state is not in a place of abundance in terms of general fund resources. So what that means is that as we're having these conversations, it means that we're going to not only be having conversations about what is needed in terms of current service level, meaning keeping the base programs going, keeping those programs secured so that we are not taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I think across Oregon communities, as we have brought to you each month, people have been putting the expansive nature of legislative resources to work, whether it be through shelter, through eviction prevention, or housing production. There has been ample work that has been delivered across local communities to make life better and more affordable in real tangible ways. And we're not in an ample general fund environment, which means that where we have normally had broader open conversations about what types of policy option packages we can put forward that are going to be either new or expansive in nature, that is not the funding reality. So that if you've been with us for a while in budget builds, you know that we have, as an agency, have gone through pretty expansive growth the last few biennium. And this won't be the case. It is unlikely, highly unlikely that will be the case for our future budget. And so all to say, it might certainly feel like it initially puts a damper on ideas. And regardless of the change, whether it's from a state or federal perspective, people are still struggling to get by. There's still not enough housing for people, and we still need to deliver for people. And so it won't be enough for us to use a lack of resources as a way to somehow find ourselves on the sidelines. Not that we would, but we are going to have to get creative in terms of how we make things work better, how we tangibly make things more efficient in concrete ways, and frankly, where we can leverage our positionality to sometimes figure out where we need to constrain ourselves in order to make way for greater flexibility while not compromising the accountability of making sure that public dollars are tangibly delivering. And it shouldn't be an equation to figure out how those dollars are delivering. We want to make sure that there are clear points of connection to that. That's a long-winded way of saying gear up for a whole host of agency request budget conversations. And then, of course, we will begin a series of listening sessions and conversations with community partners and leaders and folks across the state to see what their needs, expectations, and ideas are in building the next budget and delivering the next set of outcomes for our state. And then this will be my last update, and then I'll turn it back to you, Councilmember Farrell, which is related to the continuum of care. So we have been keeping our eye pretty closely on federal changes that either are actively being enacted or are proposing to be enacted, and there are many. I think it has been the center of a lot of interest and conversation, not just from a housing perspective, but I think across the board to try to understand where the federal landscape is changing. Where is it changing in a more immediate way, and where might we have time and hopefully process to have community voice and perspective in how those changes impact us, not only as an agency, but as an agency that is responsible for delivering for the public. And COC, Continuum of Care Resources, are one of those areas of changes. Now, they are not with finality, but certainly we expect to receive more concrete information from HUD as the lead COC agency about what changes they're making. What we know to be true, at least thus far, is one, that there will be some changes proposed or enacted. And so I don't think that it's a matter of if, but when. And I don't think any continuum of care is shocked by that. I think we've been in active discussions with a lot of them. And so they might even be closer to some of these proposed changes than we are. But one of the changes that the federal government has spent ample time talking about and exploring is the extent to which federal resources through continuum of care should be used to support permanent housing versus either supporting the facilitation of treatment-based care and or transitional housing. And so what they've indicated to us is perhaps some proposed changes in the way that COC funding can be utilized. One way of that they've kind of organized the funding, and again, this doesn't appear to be with finalities, like a third of funding for transitional housing, a third of funding for treatment-based care, and maybe a third or some other portion to be decided in a future state for permanent housing. So I think that is important to know just in terms of what the thinking is of HUD and what they're looking to propose. I imagine that continuum of care grantees and those on the ground will have a lot of perspective about it and can really speak to how much this does or does not align with the needs of their particular community, as vast and different as they are. I would imagine that one of the commonalities is being able to have resources to get more housing on the ground, which is one of the core soft spots that we have as a state and as a country. And so I offer that both as a place of, once we have some actual formal proposals to actually look at and respond to from the federal government, we'll be able to have more ample policy discussion about that and to understand what the implications are for local communities. What does that mean for us as a state agency? And how can we continue to make sure that federal and state resources can be as much of a power-packed effort in service to local decision-making, delivering outcomes, and then hopefully optimizing the use of the resources to address one of the core needs, which is that there is just too much of a mismatch between supply and demand of housing, and people need more housing that they can afford. So I just want to forecast that for council and know that we'll have some more ample conversation about that. And as we're learning about that and also hearing from other partners, we'll hopefully be able to bring some of those voices into this space and be able to identify pathways forward in a way that is collectively reflective of Oregon communities and in service to the needs of the people that we serve. So I'll take a pause there and see if there's insights, questions, or expectations from the council on any of those topics to guide follow-up.
Questions and comments from the council. That was quite a bit of content, so I want to give you guys a second to think about your questions. Important stuff. Councilmember Meehan.
I just would like to share that I'm really glad this is on the radar as far as the follow-up for the continuum of care and these folks that may receive treatment and transition and then into housing. That's a really important factor. You can't really focus on getting yourself better or getting your life together if you don't have a place to call home. So what comes down the pike, I'm not sure. I definitely feel that we would want to get a lot of feedback from the people who are working with these groups, boots on the ground here. So I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing more of what is coming down the pike.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councilmember Meehan, and I think you know perhaps maybe better than some of us that the COC program is the largest source of federal funding for homelessness. So it is not insignificant by any stretch of the imagination. And so we will match our attention and participation in it as it is certainly needed.
Any other comments from council? I'm having to scroll to look for hands. It doesn't look like it. Okay, well, you guys can give that some thought, and if you have comments later, we can certainly hear those. So, hearing no other questions, I guess we can move on with the agenda. Director Bell, have you concluded your report?
Yes, I am complete. Thank you for that.
Okay, great. All right, we'll move into the Affordable Rental Housing Division with Natasha Detweiler Davy. And I guess our next agenda item would be to officially open public hearing comments in accordance to ORS 456.561. So if anyone has signed up to have specific public comments in regards to today's agenda, we can hear those now. Shayla, last I checked, nobody was signed up. Are we still there?
That is still correct.
But I do see a hand.
Yes. Yes, if you would like to provide public hearing testimony on specific council decisions, awards, loans, grants, or fundings in accordance with ORS 456.561 for either the transaction item or the Orca development funding recommendation projects that are on the agenda this morning, please use the raise hand function.
And I
And
do
looks like we
see
have one hand up right now. Let's see. Jillian Felton.
Yes, thank you so much. I would like to give comments on the Meadowlark Place approval.
Great.
Go ahead, please.
My name is Jillian Siraj Felton. I am the Housing Director at Community Partners for Affordable Housing. We are the sponsor for Meadowlark Place, and I just wanted to thank council and staff for all of their diligent and hard work getting this project ready to close. It's been a challenging project. It's senior housing. All of the units are at 50% or less AMI, with the majority of the units at 30% AMI, and it is one of the only projects to not only incorporate childcare, but to incorporate it with a Head Start program. So the funding stack is incredibly complicated and has been challenging for all parties to work through. And I just really wanted to express appreciation for all of the staff time, answering our questions, being available for us, and helping us get to the point that we're at now, where we are getting ready to close and start construction on these 104 units. It's been a real passion project of me personally to co-locate affordable housing and a Head Start specifically. And this is just kind of really seeing that come to fruition with everybody's hard work. It's always a team effort, and we always feel like you're on our team. And so I just wanted to express our gratitude for all of the folks that have put their time and energy into getting us here, and to thank you very much for considering Meadowlark Place today.
Thank you, Jillian. Do we have any other public comments, Shayla?
I don't see. Oh, we have one additional.
Matt, you want to go ahead?
Hi, everyone. Matt Morderstrass, the Executive Director of North Bend City Coos Curry Housing Authorities. I am just wanting to give public comment to just thank the staff of OHCS for the work that they've done with getting phase 2 of North Bend Family Housing to this point. As you guys know, we are building phase 1 of North Bend Family Housing, which is 105 units. Phase 2 will start right after phase 1 is done being completed. So this will allow us to step across the property line and keep building an additional 48 units. Phase 2 is going to be extremely important because we are actually connecting it to the executive order funds that came through that are actually creating the youth and family shelter that Alternative Youth Activities is building. And so phase 2 is going to include 20 youth set-asides that we're going to be working with for PSH so that we can work with transition age youth. And so we're just really excited for the support of OHCS with getting us to this point, and just the leadership that has taken to get to the state to do these types of investments. And so I just want to thank you guys for your due diligence and being amazing.
Thank you, Matt. Any other public comments? Going once. All right. All right, I will close. Oh, Councilmember Mina.
Thank you, Acting Director, Acting Chair Bell.
Whatever you
Can't
want to say.
even, I can't get it together today. Acting Director Farrell, thank you. Um, for the record, I want to declare a conflict of interest. I am an employee of the City of Beaverton and am actively working on today's project, Meadow Rock Place, which would directly benefit or detriment from the outcome of today's vote. To be certain of my role as a public official does not influence the outcome, I am abstaining from discussions and voting on Meadow Lark Place today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. This would be a good time to catch any other statements of conflict of interest. No? All right. Okay, well, we'll close the public hearing comments, and I will turn the rest of this section of the agenda back to Natasha Detweiler-Davy. Natasha, the floor is yours.
Great. Good morning, Acting Chair Farrell, Director Bell, Housing Stability Council. Nice to see you this morning. And so I think as you heard in testimony this morning, we have some couple wonderful projects to put forward with you today. And so first up is Ty Dunson-Strain to talk about Meadowlark Place. Ty?
Yeah, good morning, council members, and acting Chair Farrell, Director Bell for the record, Ty Dunson-Strain, AD of Production, and here to present Meadowlark Place, and first want to acknowledge the work of SEPA, who you've heard give public testimony, and this project. It's a rarity in just in affordable housing to do a senior project with PSH, but also to include a Head Start in the building is definitely goes beyond the definition of being of innovative project. So wanted to acknowledge the folks over at SEPA for that, and with that, just talk about the project in general, and includes 104 units in a range of AMI levels, and we've also previously awarded LIFT funds and PSH funds, and now we're here to wrap up with the LIHTC and 4% bonds. And the project, the total cost is with including the Head Start is over $70 million, and the residential portion is around $65 million. And next slide. And partnerships involved. There includes a range of great partnerships with Vienna Star, Native American Rehabilitation Association, and the resident services will also be provided by Thrive in Place. Vienna Star and NARA have been long-standing partners in affordable housing in the serving their respective communities, and SEPA is also with their general contractor committed to reaching our MWSP participation rates for this project, and they know what to expect and have plans to reach those goals. With that, I ask that if any questions, and ask that you folks consider the motion.
All right, thank you for that. Looks like we already have some hands up. Councilmember Meehan.
Thank you. Thank you, Interim Chair Farrell. And thank you for your presentation. My thoughts are on this is particularly about a program that was started up in Rockwood with the building and Head Start daycare in the bottom part of the building, and what what a nightmare that actually turned out to be. And so I hope that we can, just take a look at, it was not a very good success. And I just want to make sure that it gets thrown in there, that we take a look at maybe what were some of the areas for that Rockwood building that didn't work out with the Head Start program. And I don't know that Head Start had anything to do with it or whatnot. I love the idea of the multi-generational interaction. And I love the idea of having a Head Start program where kids are. I think that's a really great idea, but just making sure that where it didn't work, that we're taking a look at why and see if we can make sure to curb some of that, those issues that had come up for them. So thank you. I'm really excited about this project, Ty.
Thanks. Appreciate the feedback.
All right, I see another hand up. Councilmember Nickelberry.
Councilmember
Unmuted.
Rogers, you're on mute. Oh, there
I'm
you go.
muted. Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. And Councilmember Meehan, thank you for your comment about the Rockwood project, because I was thinking how interesting it is that a Head Start is part of this particular program, in that it's for targeted for seniors, and due to the fact that multi-generational, it's not like the housing would sustain that, simply because these are one bedroom and studios. So I was just trying to figure out how all that came together, because to me it doesn't necessarily line up. So I'll be curious to see how the project fares out, going forward. And the other thing that was a disconnect for me is seniors 55 and older. So yes, maybe some will still be riding bicycles, but to have bike racks, but maybe that's for people visiting them. So I'm just wondering how all of I guess this came together, because to me it doesn't necessarily seem like everything lines up.
Yeah, and
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
guess just briefly, I mean as far as the multi-generational component, so you have a Head Start day, with the Head Start Center and a senior building that is actually um, although we haven't seen it common in Oregon, it actually has been replicated with success throughout other parts of the United States. So I guess the kind of the theory is having just a community a community building with just different serving the community with different kind of programming for different ages, and then the bike racks. I mean, I think as and I can do a follow-up with the sponsor, but the thinking behind that pretty typically is having having an active lifestyle, being able to commute to transit, being well located, and having trying to be not have a dependency on cars, is probably the thought process of the having additional bike racks. But yeah, the feedback is welcome, and we can certainly take that back to the development team.
Yeah, and I guess I will also just offer that our state investments and strategies to strategically support opportunities to co-locate early learning and childcare, I think, has been built on a lot of research, best practices, and standards around where we want to be supporting the configuration to be able to support the response, the ability to have um, access to daycare in urban centers. I think in this circumstance where we're wanting, like what the project is accomplishing is creating community that is including and incorporating seniors into it. And I think there has been a lot of um, advocacy and interest from older adults in being part of multi-generational communities. And I think those are successful models that are built out. And I am, we have it was a biennia or two ago, the state invested in our CARE program, which is incented the development of the Build Up Oregon effort, which is, a collective of um, philanthropy, CDFI, and others, experts around co-locations. And I think maybe that'll be something that we come back with on an update from that work. I think I was reviewing what's the progress of that work to date just the other day, and I think there's a lot of really useful, helpful insights from it and exciting opportunities to think about where we can find opportunities to expand doing this. So hearing that there's some curiosity about how that all works. I agree that financially, the units are not subsidizing the Head Start. The Head Start is funded separately. And so while that's part of the building itself, we are not using our housing the housing is not financing the operations of the Head Start Center. And I think that's, so those are, financially programmed for. And I think it looks a little bit different. It is pushing to where the community is seeing their want to be, and this is responsive to that need. And so I think from a financial perspective and a tenant perspective, we have high confidence on that diligence there. And then it's where we're supporting the response to community and this, real need for the daycare. I think understanding where there have been challenges in other properties, and I'm unfamiliar with that example from Councilmember Meehan, but I will be certainly interested to understand more about that and whether, there across any project when there are challenges, there's often multiple indicators or multiple things that are happening on. So it's usually not just a one thing. It's how do we set up the whole perspective? I think from intergenerational living, we have other examples of senior projects, with foster care intentions and co-located. And I think those have also been really successfully modeled and executed to have a lot of active community developed and generating, which is exciting to see the places where we can do housing that creates community more than just a roof. So I think that is kind of where we're excited to be able to see where this moves forward. And as it does, I think we can come back with more. And I think it might be a opportune time in the next few months to think about discussing an update on our Build Up Oregon effort that's specific to the approach that is the co-location of affordable housing with early learning and childcare, which is a
Thank you.
mouthful itself. So yeah.
Yeah, let's get this last comment really quick, if that's okay. Councilmember Willard.
Thank you, Interim Chair Farrell. So Natasha, you totally stole my thunder because I was just going to
Apologies.
repeat the same thing. But I absolutely love this concept. I know it's very thinking outside of the box, and I think that that's kind of where the state does need to go, is thinking outside of the box with new projects like this. And early childhood care is so important and it's so undersubscribed at this point. Like we have more children out there that are needing this early childhood care and it's just not available. I love this. I think SEPA did a great job. And I absolutely love the fact that possibly these over here in Eastern Oregon, we have grandparents that go to school and they go and they read to children and they interact with children. So what a great way just to kind of keep folks younger and interacting with these children if it's possible. So I absolutely love this project. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Meehan.
Just one more quick comment. I love the idea. I really do. The intergenerational thing is a great idea, and we do need more of that. We need more multimodal options for folks. So I definitely love that. My concern was just that the building didn't work out for Rockwood, and then what happened was those Mount Hood Head Start kiddos got displaced into another space, and so that was my concern for that building particularly. But just to find out what went wrong over there. But the multi-generational thing is awesome, and it's a great opportunity for older folks who are interested in that to be able just to walk downstairs or take an elevator downstairs and be part of the next generation. So I do love it. I think it's great, and we should do more of it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Farrell, if I may just insert myself very quickly, I just want to make sure Councilmember me and I'm glad that we're having robust conversation about not only this project, but I think the larger, not nicety, but necessity of childcare. We don't have enough of it. All 36 counties are experiencing extreme shortages. I think the council is aligned and I think understands in short form and in just the course of everyday life that one, if people have to stop to think longer than they ought to about whether they want to expand their family because there's no childcare or affordable or quality, that is not an inconvenience, that is a problem in terms of quality of life, particularly one by which we want to instill and help make clear in Oregon so people don't have to cross state lines to start and expand their life to that. But all of that to say, Councilmember Meehan, I hear your considerations, and I am curious about if there's a level of specificity that you are asking for us to bring back. So I think what I'm hearing you noting is a reference of a kin-like approach that happened somewhere, I'm sure with a lot of good intent, and I'm not familiar with this particular project, and something didn't quite pan out. And so I'm curious what you might be needing from us, or is there a more specific request in terms of as the project is getting stood up and we're learning things to bring that back? I just want to put a fine point on what you're seeing as a next step so that we can get clear about it or not miss it.
Thank you, Director Bell. The Rockwood building on 181st was a train wreck, and they did have a Head Start program in that building. Now, I'm not saying that this is the same kind of concept. It was not an older thing. This is
Sure.
a product of gentrification. So, I mean, it's totally a different experience, but I just wanted to make sure that I wanted to put out there that, hey, take a look at, and that building failed. I mean, it failed miserably, and the Head Start kiddos from the Mount Hood Head Start program were displaced into somewhere else because so it was built for this concept of having a daycare be available for residents that were living there, for the low income folks, and it was a transitional space as well, like to go from transitional housing to permanent housing, and it just was a nightmare there. And and all this space is just not being used now. I mean, it's just not even being used in the capacity that it was built for. And what a waste of money in that sense. Hopefully we can rejuice that and it's going to work out in the future. But I just want to make sure that, just take a look at it and what details that match, just be aware of it and know that that with good intention, sometimes things don't pan out. But I love, this is a different concept totally. I just wanted to point out that's what happened at this building, and that it was something that was funded, and it's kind of sitting empty, and it's sad. The whole bottom half of the whole bottom part, the community center, the daycare, the dental clinic, all that stuff is just empty, and it's shamble. It's
Understood. Understood. Yeah, I get the assignment, and that is helpful for us to assess where there might be some learnings for us to apply and incorporate in that. So understood. Thank you.
Like where contingency plans might be useful. I mean, it sounds like a public Head Start's going to be able to allow people it's built into a neighborhood, so that shouldn't be a factor, but I could see where in some cases it could be. So thank you for the cautionary comments. And then I think Councilmember Rogers has another comment.
Yes, so I am all for education and early child care and preschool and all of that. It's just the mixture. So for me, I would just like to see how the project pans out. It's good being on the council to, see about different concepts, but just wanted clarity. So thank you for everyone's comments.
Do you have any other comments, or is anyone willing to make a motion?
Well, just one more. Just I got a virtual tap. Bike storage is required by code. So other folks smarter than me said it's required. So they just wanted to make sure
Good.
folks know that also.
Great. All right. Are we at the point where we're ready to consider a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Great,
I'll
thank you.
second.
All right. All in favor, Shayla, do you want to do roll call?
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. For the record, Councilmember Meehan will be abstaining, or excuse me, Mena will be abstaining from today's vote on this particular project. Councilmember DeFontorum.
An enthusiastic yes.
Acting Chair Farrell.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Meehan.
Yes.
Councilmember Willard.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Great. All right. Pull up my agenda here. Looks like we are passing it back to you, Natasha. And then the next agenda item is the Orca development and funding recommendations with Amy Cole. Or Amy, you can just jump in.
Yes, I'm muted, so I was talking muted. But yes, I'll hand it to Amy to talk through the Orca project recommendation.
Great.
Thank you. Good morning, Acting Chair Farrell, Housing Stability Council members, and Director Bell. I'm Amy Cole, the Assistant Director of Development Resources, and I'm here to present this month's Orca project for your consideration. Before we get into it, just as I usually do, give our current impact assessment stats. There are nine projects in impact assessment that are under review, 48 projects in the impact assessment step in various stages of completing applications. 25 of those are for-profit-led projects, 25 are nonprofit-led projects, 7 housing authority-led projects, and currently we don't have any tribal-led projects. Next slide. Today's project is North Bend Family Housing Phase 2. This project will be 48 units. It is sponsored by North Bend City Housing Authority, and it will be located in North Bend, Coos County, and adjacent to North Bend Family Housing Phase 1. The request is for $8.5 million in ag worker housing tax credits and $10,096,897 in home dollars. This is also a 4% project, so there is a request for 4% low-income housing tax credits and private activity bonds. However, the project will come back later for council to decide on approval of those. Today, we're just dealing with the ag worker housing tax credits and the home dollars. Next slide. All right. So for the equity and racial justice profile highlights, the Housing Authority partners with the Southeast Equity Coalition to provide ongoing diversity, equity, and inclusion training for both the Housing Authority and team members at North Bend Family Housing. For Phase 2, where there will be many agricultural workers are expected to identify as Hispanic, the work of SCEC, the Southeast Equity Coalition, for staff trainings and marketing assistance to the property ensures that in-person interactions with potential tenants are approached through an equity lens. Additionally, North Bend Family Housing Phase 2 will continue relationships with the Coquille Indian Housing Authority and the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians that were established for North Bend Family Housing Phase 1. Both will serve as referral partners for tribal households and will provide ongoing support services reflected in memoranda of understanding. So if approved for funding today, the project will receive a letter of intent from OHCS and will move forward to the financial eligibility step of the ORCA. Projects have 6 months to complete the requirements of this step and move to the commitment step. In financial eligibility, a detailed development budget and pro forma will be closely analyzed by our production team to ensure that each project meets financial and underwriting standards, and to ensure that projects are leveraging debt and resources that justify and support the state investment. The final award amount for the project will be arrived at through the underwriting process in the financial eligibility step. And now I am happy to answer questions and ask that you consider the motion on page 14 of your packet.
All right, we will consider some questions and comments from council at this time. Anyone? Well, it's certainly nice to see more housing going into Coos County. I know there's a huge need over there, so I think that's great. Hearing no questions or comments, does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
There you go. Shayla?
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. Councilmember DeFontorum.
Yes.
Acting Chair Farrell.
Yes.
Councilmember Mena.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Meehan.
Yes.
Councilmember Willard.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
That's exciting. Okay, Natasha, looks like next on the agenda is preservation program updates and feedback, and Heather Grant.
Absolutely, yes. And I think the rest of these are non-voting. I don't know if we need to close the public hearing part of the meeting, but yeah.
I'm happy to officially close the public comment portion of our meeting, and we can proceed.
Excellent. Great. Well, I am very happy to be able to have Heather Gramp here to be able to discuss and share about our preservation work. And so with that, I'll start screen share, Heather, and maybe you can introduce yourself and get started.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Heather Gramp, Preservation Strategy Lead. It's great to be with you, Acting Chair Farrell, council members, and Director Bell. First time at HSC. So happy to be here. Today I'm talking to you about some updates to the preservation program that are underway. You do have a memo in your packet with background and a bit more of the rationale on some of the adjustments we're making in the area of preservation. And this is largely in response to the passage of Senate Bill 51 in the 2025 legislative session. So I'll just hit the high points in the next like half dozen or so slides and be happy to open it up for discussion and questions and get your feedback. If you have a burning question you want to jump in on, just please raise your hand and let me know as we go, but I'll just run through the slides. So yeah, I'll just jump right in. I did first want to ground everyone and highlight and remind everyone of the evolution of the program. Up until 2022, the agency had individual NOFAs for preservation, and each NOFA might have different criteria and scoring, et cetera. And it was with the adoption of the preservation framework in the fall of 2023 by this body, adopted that framework, that we started to shift. Then soon thereafter, in the spring of 2024, I think it was May 2024, when ORCA launched, all of our preservation work has been post-NOFA since that time. And of course, in 2023, we did get 50 million in lottery-backed bond funding. All of that has been fully deployed, I'm happy to say. And we keep moving on. In 2025, the passage of that bill, Senate Bill 51, directed us to create a statutory program. So the information that I'm sharing is really how we're using that opportunity to develop a formalized program. And it will be our first ever preservation program manual that we're hopeful will provide our partners a lot more context and detail and guidance about preservation. And we will have updated rules as well. Our framework that you all adopted in 2023 is still our North Star, but since we were adopting the statutory program, we thought it was also, of course, timely to just for continuous improvement and iteration to look at how has it been working and do we need to adjust anything? And that's what I'm talking about today. Last thing on this slide is exciting. I think we all talked, you all had the legislative briefing in the past month or two about the 2026 session and the Article 11Q general obligation bonds that were passed for preservation, and that will be shared between manufactured dwelling parks and multifamily. Details on that will be coming out in weeks or months as we land on the design of that and how we will deploy it, but we are committing to do that clearly and rapidly as we can with the knowing that the bond sale is in the spring of 2027. I think we're ready for the next slide, please, Natasha. Okay, so first, before I talk about the changes, a little bit of context, letting you know the why and the how we kind of approached this. There's kind of three things, too, that I have on the slide here. First, just as I mentioned, looking back at, so what have we seen since we have been deploying this framework? So we looked at the type of projects that came in, the amounts requested in GAP funds and types of projects, and just some other details. As you can see on the slide, we have funded 24 preservation projects since that 23 biennium, at 16 of which requested GAP. And so I'll just say a quick example here is that, one of the key things was looking at, you might have projects that look maybe similar in scope and say total project cost, and we see differences in the amount of leverage some are bringing and the amount of GAP or some are bringing. And so that kind of was one of the key areas that we were looking at, is knowing that there's a much greater demand for our resources than resources that are available. How do we, what is realistic to expect about leverage? And I'll talk more about that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. The second area here is, for context, it was important to ground truth. The 2023 framework, like I said, is still our North Star, but certainly the environment and the economy has changed a lot. So I already mentioned the constrained preservation GAP resources. That was a big driver of thinking about what kind of changes could we make to fund as many projects as possible and in a good stewardship of funds. And the second here is around the potential loss of financially unstable properties to foreclosure or sale. And just thinking about that as a key risk. And then third is just, we have some process changes that I'll be mentioning in a couple of slides around really wanting to make, the ORCA's really sped up the timeline and you all have heard about that. But with the limited resources and how projects sit on the wait list, we really want to give partners more predictability and a timeline about when they can expect funding. And so we'll be doing some process changes as well. The third key piece of context here is to let you know about our partner engagement on this. We did take our ideas for some changes to our statewide steering committee in both October and in February for feedback, and we did make some course corrections based on feedback, things that folks liked and things that we weren't quite ready to move in some directions. So that is the context. I will dive right into the changes. First, just thinking about looking at the top line category changes, and just for some grounding, the original framework had 3 categories of properties at risk of loss. And so this is when projects come into the ORCA and they're asking for GAP funds, and we need to determine which projects are most critical to deploy those funds. We have these categories and criteria with the categories, and so we rate and rank them based on those. The original framework had expiring affordability, federal project-based rental assistance at risk of loss, and physical and financial challenges. So at a high level, the only one we're really changing is the physical and financial challenges. We've renamed that as physical condition issues. Neither of those were maybe very precisely defined in the original framework, and that was actually intentional as a start of deploying our framework. We know that there is quite a bit of variability in projects, but now with that context piece about stabilization being a primacy, we have the PSI as a pathway now, and we have very specific metrics we've defined. So we do define that risk of loss. So we've kind of peeled that off of the preservation framework. The other piece that's listed there around property transitions is new, and in reflecting internally and with partner feedback, we weren't ready to call that a new preservation category, but we thought it was important to acknowledge. And in our program manual, we do signal to partners where the owner does want to sell and needs to sell the property. We know there may be organizational changes, portfolio transitions, property. There's a lot of things that may be in flux. We are available. We just wanted to reinforce. We are available for consultation and technical assistance and can meet to explore options. And if there's a case to support a property acquisition by a new owner to offer tenants a stable experience and maintain the affordability. If resources allow, we may opt to do that. And I'm sure that's something we will be thinking more about in the future and seeing if we have the resources and can iterate that, and if that's an area of support for preservation. I think I'm ready for the next slide, please, Natasha. A key area to talk about here is leverage requirement changes. I kind of already foreshadowed that in some of my earlier remarks. And this will be a change that across all categories that relates to that goal to stretch limited resources further, fund more projects, and leverage private equity wherever we can. So we were flexible in those first years of the project because of that diversity. And we have seen, preservation projects, some are very limited to replacing one or two major systems. Some are a huge full scope rehab. So we do see that. The only limits we put in the original framework were on the 9% competitive round. We have a $3 million cap for 9% LIHTC. For 2026, there is that expectation for leverage, and there will be limits on projects that are solely GAAP. And it's important for me to say that third bullet there, absolutely, there will be exceptions for projects that are unlikely to attract investors, and we're working on that. We're kind of looking at our data. We've heard about like investor appetite. We're thinking about what are the project thresholds, et cetera. And we certainly will build in exceptions where it's not reasonable or feasible to expect that there can be a certain amount of leverage. But that is the direction we're going in to make these resources spread further. I want to let you know also, and for the partners who are on the call, our approach will be to release technical advisories in advance of decision windows, which I'll talk about in a minute. So depending on the type of funding and the amount available, we would be indicating which categories will be funded in a certain decision window, in likely all three, but if not, we would be indicating that. And we would be indicating, is there a maximum on GAAP? Is there a minimum on leverage for which categories? It might vary greatly depending on if there's an abundance of resource, then we'd probably have a different approach than if it's a very small amount of resource. And so our approach is going to be to release a technical advisory and again, give that predictability to partners of when a decision window will be closing. So that's the leverage piece. Let me just go to the next. I want a couple more slides. And we always say preservation, it's always complicated. So there's the three top line categories, and then within the categories, there's criteria for how you land on critical priority, high priority, or medium. So we do have some adjustments within each of the three categories. Under expiring affordability, previously this was only available to for-profit entities. And again, in that current environment, knowing there may be industry shifts, certainly, we couldn't think of a reason why we might not support if one nonprofit entity is selling a property and another entity could acquire it to maintain that affordability rather than have it foreclosed, for example, or this is around expiring affordability. We just won't assume that nonprofits will always just keep it affordable even if the affordability expires. So it's open to any type of owner. It's agnostic. PHA, nonprofit, for-profit. Under PBRA, the focus in the way we wrote out our framework previously was on USDA rural development and the rental assistance that is attached to those projects. And we had said we would evaluate other types of rental assistance on a case-by-case basis. The change for 2026 is that all types of federal rental assistance are treated the same. We have a growing ecosystem of different kinds of federal run assistance. And in practice, we were treating them all the same anyway. So we just made that official. And lastly, under physical and financial challenges, I already talked about how that is now physical condition issues. Um, a couple things to say here. We're still not locking down a hard definition and recognition of how much projects can vary. We'll keep exploring this though. In the manual, we do make clear that the level of need, critical needs, must be borne out by the, excuse me, capital needs assessment. We did start requiring that last spring of 2025 at impact assessment. And as folks work through the ORCA, we do reassess, are they still critical priority? Are they still high priority? So that is one important piece to make sure that we're funding the most critical projects and ground truthing that capital needs assessment. We're also discouraging newer properties from coming. This was an area of partner feedback where we had proposed a schema and then recognizing that age is not, it's like a blunt instrument. And, a coastal property is very different from an inland property. So what we are doing is not really focusing on the age of properties other than to say that if an entity really does feel like a property that's newer than 20 years since last rehabbed or newly constructed, that is really the priority for preservation, then we will, if it's, it passes all the, and is critical and is able to be funded, we would do that, but we would put a pause on other new construction dollars for that entity for a period of 2 years. So that is a change to just signal, again, we want to fund the most critical projects. The demand is there. Okay, I'll try to run through these quickly. One more review process change. I mentioned this move to a decision window. We've been using ORCA, and that this is a rolling process. Once a project completes impact assessment, that's their date stamp for being on the wait list. And with limited resources, we've been pulling projects one at a time. So that might not be optimal for a variety of reasons in terms of if we have less resources than the large project that has a much greater ask, then we might bypass them for the next on the list. We don't want to fund projects like a trickle at a time. And we also recognize that there are very worthy projects that have rated high as opposed to critical. And so in a given period, whether it's 6 months or 12 months, we want to evaluate a cohort all at once. So also it gives that partners that predictability so they can know when can we expect a decision. I haven't submitted an intake. I'm working on an intake. I'm working on impact assessment. I know a date at which decisions will be made. And they also will have in those technical advisories I mentioned that knowledge of what any kind of maximums on gap or leverage requirements will be. And then they can submit an application that is responsive to those. And then we can use that decision window for just to kind of expedite and move all those projects at once. Yeah, I think we can come back to that if there's questions, but maybe that covers it. The timeline, so would love to open it up for discussion with you and hear your feedback and questions. In this month, we do have a draft preservation program manual and some temporary rules, and we will be releasing that this month, also recruiting for a rules advisory committee. So partners who are listening on the call, please be on the lookout for that recruitment. Our plan is to have a first rack on May 12th. And then we'll be going through the process of hearings, et cetera, and comment periods. And we expect the final program manual and rules to be live in July. And that is the high level preservation update for what we're working on in 2026. And we're doing some other things, but we'll be happy to open it up for feedback and questions.
Well, thank you for that excellent presentation. I'll just take some ownership and say for myself, it is extremely helpful as somebody who doesn't work in ORCA. I'm not a developer. I'm not as close to the process as perhaps some of my fellow council members. Having these types of presentations and really walking us through like the words, like what does this mean, is extremely helpful for me. So thank you very much for that. And I will open the comments to Councilmember Willard.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. Appreciate it. Heather, thank you so much for the presentation. A lot of extensive information to review and look at. I have a question about the leverage requirements. I come from a rural community and I represent my side of the state, which is Eastern Oregon. And so the leverage requirements scare me just a little bit, and I think that they're a little bit daunting as far as how vigorous would the exceptions be if we are not able to leverage any additional funding. Some of these projects that are in dire need of preservation in smaller communities, they're too small to get any additional leverage funds. People turn us away and say, the project's too small. So even trying to leverage any federal tax credits, that's been a challenge within itself. So I'm just kind of curious how the exception part would work. Is that going to be more hoops that folks would have to, more developers in smaller communities are going to have to jump through? Or is there that mutual understanding that yes, we're in a rural community and yes, it's very hard to seek additional leverage requirements? Thank you.
Sure. Great question. And it's the latter. So I'll just repeat what you were asking, I think, around whether it's hoops to jump through or exceptions. When we say exceptions, we don't mean like special requests for special dispensation or a waiver. We will build into when we release a technical advisory and information about what funds are available and for what categories and what the decision window timeline is. We would be proactively listing exceptions for, and I think rural is a very great example of one of those exceptions. And it might relate to project size because certainly we hear mixed things, but we've been hearing about investor appetite in rural areas is there for some of the larger projects, but we know smaller projects might have that challenge. So we're looking at our data. We want to be data driven. We will be just providing just guidance about whether it's just an outright exception for any particular category of projects. Rural would be an example, and or whether there'd be a need to demonstrate something that will be determined. Whether there's a need to demonstrate that it was not feasible either through some kind of a pro forma or even a investor letter that declined to participate in the project. So we won't make you, it's not like we're going to have folks ask for an exception or a waiver. We'll just be building it in really proactively, letting folks know which kind of projects can ask for gap only.
Great. That's perfect to know. Thank you so much. I appreciate that clarification.
Sure.
I have maybe a follow-up question on that. So projects that are already in and sort of on the wait list, are they going to be subject to these same projects like after the fact, or are these for new projects that are being submitted?
We do always let folks know that until there is a soft commitment through an approval through this body, that some requirements can change. And so, and I'm hoping some of the folks who are on the wait list might even welcome that because it's just the reality of the limited resource with large gap only projects, for example, it's not going to be feasible to fund them. So it's kind of either way you look at it, we will be applying some of these new limits on gap and leverage requirements to any project that does not yet have a commitment. We did that last year with the change in requiring capital needs assessment at impact assessment. And it was the same sort of, you've been in process, but until you have that commitment, we're coming back to let you know that we have placed an additional ask on our applicants.
Okay,
Yeah, and so I think just maybe I'll unpack that a little bit. Acting Chair Farrell, I think, as we have developed and retain a wait list, one of the pieces of establishing assurance of integrity to the wait list is allowing those projects to bridge to current. And so firstly, if there's a project that has come to Housing Stability Council and has a reservation, we're not changing any, we don't retroactively change any rules that they are proceeding forward with. And so if it's favorable to our pipeline, and so I would call that our funded pipeline, our development pipeline. If it's favorable, if the shift is favorable, then we allow them to accept it, but we don't require it to be shifted after that initial reservation. But then for the wait list, so those projects that don't have secured resources but have applied, and when we are, generally just, in overall for the wait list. And so this isn't specific to preservation, but overall. So when we have committed to ensuring that the wait list is real and active. And so there are cadences of updates to say, okay, you submitted this initial application a year ago. Is this all still the same project? And so we know and so we know, but also the development community understands what what number they are in their different category of project. And that, our adopted practice and standard has been when we have, ORCA updates overall around what, comes next in that evaluation, or if there's a criteria or something, the application team has developed a means for, okay, so these are the updates, and so you don't need to resubmit everything, but here's the other questions we need to have understanding of. And I think we develop it on that circumstance. So what are the types of updates? Are there what would be different from what we initially had received from those individual applicants? And so the ORCA already has a leverage test included within it. And so I think what this is really calling out and highlighting is where we want to be ensuring that there is earnest attempt to leverage, including 4% tax credits. And so the place where we've adopted, over the we're not very long into the ORCA life, but we adopted a standard for our new development on how big of a project can you build without a tax credit. So if you're building 80 unit project that's ordinarily at a scale that could yield a tax credit, make the tax credit structure make sense. And so we've done that on the new construction side. And then as we're looking at preservation, there's a lot of different ways to approach it, including for smaller projects and rural projects and urban projects, but wanting to just ensure that with such limited resources, we get as far as we can and make all of the accommodations that are really needed when there is the small rural project that doesn't make sense for tax credit investment. But I will also say oftentimes there would be an organization that doesn't have a significant enough portfolio to be interesting. So it's maybe not the project, but it's the organizational barrier to being able to yield a tax credit investor. And I think that, again, those are circumstances that we would want to be thoughtful towards. And sometimes you can add another partner into that project and be able to build out enough to be able to get that leverage. And I think when we're thinking about the stewardship of the public dollar, wanting to balance the organization with the what are the circumstances that can bring the most support to the public funds to be able to get the furthest reach from those. And so I think, understanding, acknowledging the small rural projects are likely to not be able to support a lot of debt. They're likely to not be, and to some extent, adding the cost of, tax credits and the federal work there will sometimes tip that scale to not be logical in terms of it adds cost. And so where you need to have a large enough project to balance that. And so I think this is really expanding our application of the leverage test that is in ORCA to be applicable to preservation.
Super helpful. All right, Councilmember Mina.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. Couple questions on the preservation. One of the things that we've seen the last couple months in the projects that we had to help out was an issue with vacancies, issues with fees, and issue with property management companies. And some of those things are honestly, some of this may have been mismanaged by the property management company and or by the entire development team that in oversight. So my question is, does the state have, or does the agency have an at-risk list of properties that because of the DCR, what the DCR is, or because of inspection, like not passing inspections, that kind of gives an early warning of physical conditions? Does the county have I'm sorry, does the state have something like that? Because that would help in identify those early on, those projects that may need that bailout because of the physical condition.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Mena. We have a lot of information. So we do have a risk rating system that is related to the both programmatic compliance and physical compliance and our financial performance. And so part of that is reflected in the financial report study and evaluation that we were able to publish last year for the first time. And actually Kelso, who's up next on lending, we're working on the updated version of that. But and I think there's several challenges. One is I don't know that we're like that it is we see things, but our financial information reporting is a year late. And so I think so we on the financial side of that, we're a little bit late, but they're usually chronic challenges. And so you see them for several years. And so I think we're looking at those, and I think that is the high profile for it. There are, and similar for property management on the programmatic compliance side, where are we seeing those challenges? And I think really wanting to be active, try to activate to identify the issues and challenges. And I know we've talked about, as we have done our PSI investments, working through the financial reality of that, making sure the project is configured to be able to be successful with that essentially debt buy down. But also highlighting what are the driving issues? What are these root causes that have gotten to this situation? So where are the vacancy issues? Let's see, what is the problem? What is the challenge? Why is there, what is this vacancy issue stemmed from? Is it a market issue? Is it a rent rate issue? Is it your outreach and marketing? Or are you just needing to do an update to your tenant selection plan so that you can do a refresh of your wait list if you have retained a wait list for longer than is operationally reasonable? It takes too long to work down that wait list. And so I think that there are a lot of complexities to that, but that we do have some good insights and ability to be able to see and predict and have aligned our property improvement plans to that. But I think where those are one-sided, that's where we have found ourselves not having strategies to be moving forward through. And so we're continuing to try to find other ways and potentially, I think, since you're flagging this, Councilmember Mena, where is it that jurisdictions could be partners with us as we're working through and kind of triaging the critical needs within the portfolio overall, because surely it's impacting community as well as partners and the tenants.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I completely understand all the challenges associated with managing a project that, you get the information a year later or even later than that, and being able to see and assess. I would say even a year later is better than not, right? And so having that and reviewing that information is important. Also, like you mentioned, leveraging our partners that, our lenders that have that information and understanding, have, in our management, that data would be important. I'm just concerned from the perspective of if we don't actively manage and proactively manage our portfolio, this tremendous investment that has been created, then we're going to end up having to invest a lot more money to preserve them than otherwise. I remember a project that in Portland that, at first it just required $100,000 investment because there was deferred maintenance, there wasn't generating enough income, but because of the red tape that was created, that didn't happen. And 5 years later, because it was such an important project, The city and, the state ended up investing, I think it was around $5 million. And so it's important. And I just want to bring that up and as we work through this process of preservation, that those things are looked at. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will just say, I can look at Director Bell's face, and she might want to add a thought as well. I think the idea of the strategy to prioritize operational feasibility, and I think needing to look at what are the ways where we can support that with our resources, but also are there regulatory streamlining refinements or shifts that we need to be making to really holistically support and sustain the portfolio. I think the preservation program is the foundation from where we can operate that, that large scale work, and then the mechanics of actually allocating resources to support different types of those strategies is, I think, the umbrella developed through the new statutory program, and I think the opportunity that we have here.
Councilmember Farrell, I'll maybe just offer very quickly just a couple of comments, because I think this is probably what Heather anticipated was broad and robust and deep conversation around preservation. And I imagine this will be part of our near future, Councilmember Mena and all. I'm not going to readdress or verbalize any of the comments here. I think all of that is right. And Councilmember Mena, there's a unique dimension of intervention and issue that you're naming, and I want to make sure that it doesn't get lost in the weight of what we're proposing here. So I'm going to take a stab at trying to consolidate this here. It is no surprise, I think, to any of us that preservation needs, and there is a need for preservation resources. There's a need for a more updated set of preservation interventions that are reflective of today's challenges and today's realities. I don't have to tell you, Councilmember Mena, about all of the market challenges and the ways in which that has made it tougher to build housing and the way that it's made it tougher to own and operate. I think you and all of us are also aware that we have a lot of incredible partners that have helped us expand supply across the state. That includes the metro region. And I think none of us need to be convinced that there are challenges, and some of those have garnered more public attention than others. And so I'm both holding the reality of the good leaders and good organizations that are doing a lot of good work and the very real challenges that we are in today. The legislature has been incredibly understanding of the supply constraint and has taken that on as a task and have delivered and invested more resources. Part of what I think is presented here is connected to, but distinct from, I think, a unique set of interventions that are going to be needed to address the real and chronic issues that some portfolios and projects are experiencing, specifically, but not exclusively, in the metro region. This is not a dig on any one person or any organization. We need more units, and we've relied on a lot of partners to do that, and they've been able to do it. And part of our role, your role and ours collectively, is accountability to the public dollar, to make sure that the public dollar is delivering quality services and quality outcomes with acknowledgement that, I just mentioned at the top, we're in a budgetary constrained environment. We can't keep going back to the legislature asking for more and more and more. Now, we will, because we need more housing, and you get what you pay for. And there is a reality that the confluences of the market have created some unique dimensions of intervention that are needed that PSI is not going to solve in the long term. It will help and it will do some things, and I believe that. And we need to be clear about what issues and what set of issues that we are solving for. And in that, Councilmember Mena, I don't want to put words in your mouth, there is a unique dimension of intervention that require, I think, a more substantive and urgent response on our end that is separate and distinct, but also connected to the broader set of preservation issues. And so I'll maybe end where I started at the top, which was that we're going to be bringing a lot of conversation instead of recommendations to the council for awareness around portfolio health, but also issues that we don't want to just point to the data and observe, but that are going to require some action, probably some hard conversation, and the money we're stewarding is not ours. It belongs to the public, and we have to make sure that there is fidelity and quality to the outcomes. And when there isn't, that we will take appropriate actions in service to our partners, but also with them, and also not believing if we close our eyes and ask for more money that issues will resolve on their own, because they won't.
Comments from council? Okay, well, that's a lot of information, and we have a lot more information to get through. So, Natasha, you want to just move us into our next item?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so thank you all. I guess I thought I'd just pop the timeline back up here. And so we will be working to finalize the program structure and be doing the, different feedback loops to wrap that, finalize the initial program adoption. And we'll be coming back in the future with more of that conversation that Director Bell was just referencing on preservation. And so not the last opportunity to discuss it. And so with that, we're going to move into our next conversation, which is around our direct lending work. And this is our second conversation bringing this to you all. And I think if we're, tying it to the conversation that we just had around our portfolio viability, and I think one of the pieces that we do acknowledge is that where we're have a portfolio that is has been invested through lenders across the state, and where the state has not had an active direct lending program, we are limited in the ways that we can work to solve and resolve challenges. And I think thinking about this as broadening that toolkit, and I think as some exciting steps to be able to ensure that we're filling needs and being able to best support and sustain the public investment, not through replacing, but through adding ability to have tools that meet the needs. And so I will have Kelso introduce herself and start sharing slides.
Wonderful. Good morning, Housing Stability Council members, Acting Chair Farrell, and Director Bell. I am Kelso Brazunas, the Financial Strategy Lead on the ARH team, and I'm here to discuss Direct Lending Implementation Part 2. So in January, I was here to provide an overview, sort of the reasons why we are restarting direct lending and the timeline. And so I'm back this month to review some more specifics on the loan product details, our thinking around lending oversight, an engagement update, and a charges overview. So just quickly, a little bit on the overview. As a reminder, direct lending is first lien perm loans that are funded by bonds. And this funding type will require increased underwriting and review, as well as OHCS bond issuance. There's 2 or 3 key benefits for why we are restarting direct lending. This provides cheaper debt or lower cost of capital, which can be especially useful during market shifts. It builds resiliency by adding a reliable source of capital. And the way that we get to cheaper debt or a lower cost of capital is with things like lower interest rates and longer loan terms and amortizations. This lower cost of capital also optimizes efficient use of our limited subsidy dollars as well. And kind of the second main benefit is that OHCS can generate revenue or spread to be used to invest into more affordable housing projects and units. And direct lending aligns mission to debt financing that can be directed by the state versus exclusive reliance on profit-driven lending. And I'll also note here as a reminder, we offered direct lending in the past, and so we still have an active but small portfolio of projects that are supported by first lien permanent debt. So Our restarting of direct lending is making historical tools available again in today's market conditions. Next slide. All right, so moving into some of the specifics of loan product details, we will have two main types of perm loan products. There are E&D, or elderly and disabled loans, and that comes from a state constitutional amendment from, I believe, the 80s. And there's another product that is credit enhanced by HUD with their risk sharing program. So we will have these loan product details along with really key underwriting standards available in term sheets on our website. And we're hoping to share those drafts with partners in May. And this will be the spot where partners will come. It'll be a 2 or 3 page term sheet, and they'll be able to see the key details about what these loan products look like. Some of the details include, of course, the interest rate. We as the state HFA can offer tax-exempt bonds, so a tax-exempt rate. We could do taxable or a blend of the two. And just as a reference, of course, these numbers always change, but as of late March, OHCS estimates that we could provide a 30-year tax-exempt loan at 5.45%. And then in terms of loan amortization and term, we plan to have a few different options, and they could include the ones that are listed here. For eligibility, these loan products, these perm loan products, can be used for a variety of project types. So that includes new construction, preservation, acquisition, and refinancing. And there is an additional population criteria for the E&D loan for either older people or people with disabilities. Next, we have affordability term and AMI limits. So the affordability term for these perm loans will be 15 years or the life of the loan, whichever is longer. And I think we will often see 30 or 40-year loan terms. And so in that case, that will be the affordability term. And I'll note for affordability term is that when direct lending is paired with other ARH funding, the most restricted affordability term requirement would apply. So this approach maximizes flexibility for projects while also allowing subsidy sources to really drive the policy goals on a per transaction or project basis. And this was pretty similar to the affordability term when we had direct lending in the past, over 15 years ago. It was the life of the loan back then. And then finally, AMI limits. So for these perm loans, we will be following 40% of the units at 60% AMI or 20% of the units at 50% AMI. And this comes from the IRS requirements for tax-exempt bonds. And then we will allow the rest of the units to be at any level AMI, whatever the project needs, including unrestricted. And so what this means is that these loan products can be used for both traditional affordable housing as well as mixed income projects. And again, on AMI limits, similar to affordability term, when paired with other ARH funding, the most restricted AMI limit would apply. Next slide. A little bit on lending oversight. Wanted to note that OHCS is working to establish a credit committee to provide scrutiny and review to mediate exposure to real financial risk that's associated with direct lending. And this credit committee would be doing review in advance of bringing any funding recommendation to Housing Stability Council. This committee will be appointed by Director Bell, and it will include expertise from OHCS staff, other state housing finance agencies that have done this for many years, as well as other lending and banking experts. And we are actively working to create that committee now. We haven't made any appointments yet. The other thing I'll note here for this credit committee is that we hope to mirror some of the other structures of the existing OHCS bodies that we have, including Finance Committee. So this credit committee will really be part of our operational workflow to ensure appropriate oversight. Next slide. So on to engagement and other connections. I'm going to talk a little bit about engagement and other connections, briefly talk about the charges, and then we'll wrap up with looking at the timeline one more time. On engagement, we've met in small focus groups and one-on-one meetings with local lenders, national lenders, developers, tribal partners, and other state housing finance agencies. And then we also did outreach to some partners that we don't work with super frequently, like philanthropy and credit unions. Well, we're hearing many things. One thing we're hearing is that developers really want clarity and flexibility in loan structure. And so we're hoping to share draft term sheets, underwriting standards, HUD application requirements, and sort of ORCA application processes. We're hoping to share that in May. I think we've really discussed with these partners what direct lending is and why we are restarting it. And so now the engagement will move into how partners can apply, more about the details, and how these loan products would really work in their projects or capital stacks. We've also heard that there are gaps in the market for getting perm loans, and we're still working to identify when and how these show up. I think it fluctuates based on market conditions, but it can include things like smaller projects, newer borrowers, certain geographic areas, potentially middle or mixed income projects, and refinancing requests. So we're continuing to work to identify how we can complement some of those gaps that we see. And then I think just in terms of why some of the engagement that we've been hearing really matters, the state can be a reliable capital source when private markets tighten. This will certainly ebb and flow. So there could be years when private markets loosen and developers have many options to choose from, but we want the state's perm loan products to be a reliable source that is useful as market conditions ebb and flow. There's two other connections or pieces of work that I want to talk about related to restarting direct lending, and both have been discussed a little bit in this meeting earlier. So the first is our OHCS financial report study. This is the study that analyzes operating expenses as well as other key financial metrics. And so we know from this study that projects are debt burdened. And we are in the process of making our updates for FY24. That's our most recent year of financials that we have. So we know from our FY24 analysis that about 33% of properties in the OHCS portfolio have a DCR or a debt coverage ratio below 1.1. And then the other connection I'll note is related to PSI. Of the 30 projects that we are funding with PSI resources, 92% of the nearly 39 million in funding made available is going to projects to pay down and restructure private debt. And this was exactly what those projects needed. This was a very needed resource for partners and projects. But I think if you think of a world in which we have direct lending, and so if we have projects that are struggling in our own portfolio as the senior position lender, those PSI state resources could come back to the state. And we just have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how we're restructuring or refinancing those loans and that debt that's not exclusively profit driven. We also have slightly more controls over things like default, forbearance, and foreclosure processes. Next slide. All right, just a quick touch on charges. So we have here on the right-hand side our direct lending charges, and I put them next to our conduit bond charges as a comparison. I think we're trying to provide continuity across all of our loan products. And as a reminder, conduit or pass-through revenue bonds, these are paired with 4% LIHTC. These are where OHCS is providing sort of sufficient underwriting and oversight, but doesn't take any credit risk with respect to the loan. So the banks do an additional level of underwriting and they're dispersing funds directly to projects. They are collecting payments and they have their own fee structures on top of the OHCS charges. So for projects that are getting conduit bonds, they have the OHCS charges for our role in that issuance, as well as the bank charges. And for direct lending, the charges you see here are really the main and only charges for those perm loans that are funded by OHCS. And I think going to that, many projects seeking direct lending will have other OHCS funding. And so OHCS as the perm lender can streamline the number of funders, the reporting requirements, and the project charges. If I just walk you through it a little bit, everything, so application charge and issuance charge, those are the same across conduit bonds and direct lending. Same with cost of issuance. These are the reimbursements for the true costs of all of the fees that go along with both issuing bonds and loans. And then finally, there's monitoring charge. You'll see it is a little bit higher for direct lending. Direct lending does require higher level of monitoring. There's more on-site inspections, more reporting to HUD, things like replacement reserve request reviews, all of the things that the first lien lender does. I'll note for monitoring that there's no additional private lender compliance. This is the only compliance that they will have. And then the thing that is not on here is that conduit bonds have a 0.25% annual charge on the balance of the bond. That's not listed here because for direct lending, that annual charge is just factored into the interest rate that we will be offering to partners. So it's not a separate adjustment or charge. It's just factored into the interest rate. And then I'll also note too, we will still have both of these structures. So developers will still be able to choose conduit bonds or direct lending. We know that conduit bonds might work better in certain situations, and so we'll have both. I think it's all about expanding tools in the toolbox. We'll still have both options. Last slide. Thank you. I will end on the implementation timeline. This doesn't look too different from what we reviewed in January. So again, OHCS plans to launch direct lending through the ORCA in July of 2026. So these projects will go through our full ORCA standards and ORCA process. We are right now in the January to June section. Again, as the senior permanent lender, there's no third-party private perm lender doing an additional layer of underwriting. So where we are currently is still continuing to increase our underwriting and our application standards, as well as hire some of the needed staff, including positions like an appraiser or a construction manager to help us with this work, all leading up to launching in July. I think with that, I will pass it back to Natasha or maybe see if there are any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kelso. And so I think Acting Chair Farrell, if there's questions or discussion, certainly here for it.
All right, with that, we'll take any questions and comments from council. Councilmember Rogers.
I just want to say thank you for the presentation. This is exciting, and I'm looking forward to us continuing the work.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mena.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. It is a huge undertaking. It's, I would even venture to say even bigger than the ORCA undertaking, just because of really what the additional capacity building that would have to be created, I think, at the agency to be able to do all of those things. Definitely, there's going to be higher monitoring and higher analysis and financials section because of the direct lending option. So it'd be interesting to see how this progresses, and definitely want to make sure that it succeeds. I just understand that it's a tremendous undertaking, and that will take, I think, a couple of years to implement. Yeah, it looks interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councilmember Mena, and sorry to talk first, Director Bell, but I agree. This is a significant, reviving a significant body of work and expertise that had been, shut down a long while ago. And I think we've been working to lay the foundation for that over the last year and a half. And so I feel like as we were taking on the work to organize and restructure our work to be able to do ORCA, also identifying where were there gaps and where were there the needs to improve our sophistication or expand our sophistication. And so CalSO has really ushered strategic work within to be able to ensure that we're having our needed oversight, understanding, and diligence for both the financial underwriting. It's a different type. We have underwriting teams and production teams, and we also have, production analysts that have worked for banks, and we are really leveraging all of that to be able to really have a concerted system around that and really have our eyes open around where we had deficits to have strategies to fill and create those. And so I think we feel really excited about our readiness towards that. There's still a lot to kind of move through in that, but now I think, as you know, and Kelso's speaking to the credit committee approach, wanting to also steward that final oversight as we have done and established our core diligence. And so I think offering direct lending in July 26th, that doesn't mean we're closing a loan in August, but that does mean that we do think that at that point we will be able to have doors open and ability to execute after with projects that have that as a in their financial stack.
Yeah, thanks for that, Natasha. And I'll maybe just offer a couple of very quick comments. Thank you for this, Council. This is we know what the behind the scenes has been, and so I'm grateful for you being here to be able to keep Council apprised of the journey. So a couple things I would offer for the Council to consider, and nothing immediately, Councilmember Farrell, is needed. I think that there is real utility in the Council being aware of the charge, governance, and ultimately some of the decisions that will help be guided and supported through the credit committee. That doesn't mean that there needs to be another overlayer of work and rechecking of things, but I do think that it will be a really important apparatus to ensure fidelity of some of the good solid financial decisions that are going to come in front of that committee. And so I think the Council may not see it now, but knowing this Council, you all will probably take interest in it. And so I'll anticipate that as a desire. And so just know that's one of the things I'm thinking about as one of the places to come back to. The other thing that I would also offer, again, not for the moment, is we have been in a regular practice with Council of oftentimes bringing greater visibility into the back end operations of the department from a structural perspective, from a governance perspective, so that you all can sort of see how we are organized as a way to have the so that you all have insight as to sort of the base of our operations to help get these things done. You know, I think you all know we don't just sort of trip and fall and find ourselves here, but I do think that it would be important, really, really important for the Council to be aware of just the structural orientation of how we're organized around this work. And so, Councilmember, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you didn't ask for it, but I might suppose that might be a really important thing for the Council to at least have some visibility or orientation to, so that you have that, again, because I'm anticipating once we launch and as we're getting into it, those will be some of the things that you all start naming as a place of interest. So the degree to which we can anticipate that and proactively get you all kind of up to speed with that, even if there's not a specific decision point, we would be happy to do that at this phase ahead of a summer launch. So I'll just offer that, Councilmember Farrell, for the Council to think about, along with if there's any other needs that the Council would desire, so that we can build that in. We'd be happy to devote time to that.
You read my mind. I was going to suggest some sort of like quick orientation, maybe to sort of where we were before, what happened, why did we stop, and then like what's different now. So I think that'll be great.
Perfect.
Any other questions or comments from Council? Otherwise, we've got just a couple more items on our agenda. But by all means, if there's questions and comments, this is your space. No? All right. Well, Natasha, you can just keep moving us along then.
Excellent. So yeah, thank you so much. We'll look forward to continuing those discussions. And up, oh, I guess I'm up next, but I will just do this briefly. I have the ORCA update is within the Housing Stability Council packet. I think we'll move ourselves into the consolidated plan. I do just want to highlight that within that, the things going on in ORCA, there's the 9% evaluation underway. And I have included the first quarterly appendix for the PSI investments. And so this is the baseline reporting quarter. And so the PSI investments and their beginning point metrics. And so our commitment is, and this is our follow-up on previous conversations piece that was referenced at the top of the meeting, but will be to do this quarterly survey follow-up and be able to share back with Housing Stability Council so we can see the impact of that PSI investment over this first year of that implementation until we move it into the overall portfolio reporting again. I think we spoke earlier about having, looking more at risk ratings and being able to talk more to that as well. So we'll continue those forward. And I then will think we can move into the consolidated plan, and I am going to be pleased to hand this conversation to Glenn and Frankie, who are here. So I will hand it to you to introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Great. Well, I will just jump in. Thank you for making time for us today. Good morning, members of the council, Acting Chair Farrell and Director Bell. My name's Frankie Lewington. I'm a senior associate with Root Policy Research. We are a housing research and community planning firm based in Denver, Colorado, and we have been assisting OHCS along with Business Oregon and OHA to develop the State of Oregon's 2026-2030 Consolidated Plan. So the presentation today will be a brief overview of our community engagement efforts and the identified housing priority needs that are reflected in the consolidated plan. So next slide, please. Next slide. So we implemented a pretty robust community engagement strategy with several different avenues or vehicles to collect engagement from stakeholders, interested and affected parties, as well as residents. So here is just an overview of what we did, and I'll jump into a little bit more detail with each bullet point. So go ahead to the next slide, please. So we worked with Glenn and his team to connect us with organizations that are serving populations that are primarily the beneficiaries of the consolidated plan resources. So we were able to hold 6 focus groups across the state of Oregon with different populations. So we held 2 focus groups with residents living in transitional housing in Lincoln City and Tillamook. We held a focus group with clients of the HIV Alliance in Eugene, 2 focus groups with clients of the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency in Mill City and Monmouth, and then another focus group with clients of CAPCO in Pendleton. Next slide, please. So through OHCS, we held several different stakeholder and interested and affected party focus groups and interviews. Here's a list of the organizations that had representatives consult with us during the development of the plan. Approximately, we had 35 organizations participate in these conversations, and these efforts were communicated through existing stakeholder and interested and affected parties lists that OHCS holds. Next slide, please. We also held 2 surveys, one focused primarily on housing needs, the other on community development and stakeholders who are more likely to utilize the CDBG funding resource. But the OHCS survey here, we collected approximately 450 responses, which is great. We helped develop the previous consolidated plan and got just shy of 300, so that was an improvement. Got a lot of great information and feedback on housing needs and challenges faced by different areas of the communities, different areas of the state, and how those communities wanted to see those needs and challenges addressed. Next slide, please. We also held a variety of other presentations and meetings. We met with we were lucky enough to join the annual meeting of the Public Housing Authority. So Councilmember Willard was there and participated in that conversation. So we met with the executive directors of 12 of those PHAs, representing the balance of state. We met with 11 continuum of care leads, representing COC organizations around the balance of state. We also were able to carve out a little bit of time to get feedback from COC staff members at their annual meeting and got approximately 80 staff members participated in that conversation, and then a variety of other presentations and feedback collected from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, OHCS's Affordable Rental Housing Partners, the Rural Policy Council, and then I also participated in the Business Oregon Infrastructure Summit. Next slide, please. And then as part of the consolidated plan process, HUD requires 2 public hearings to be held during the development of this plan, one during the development and the other during the draft comment period before the submission to HUD. The first public hearing was held virtually on April 24th, 2025. Approximately 8 people participated in that public hearing, and that was a opportunity to provide an overview of the consolidated plan process and then gather feedback on housing and community development needs. The second public hearing will be held later this month, Thursday, April 30th, 2026, and that will also be a virtual public hearing, and this will provide the public to review and provide feedback on the draft consolidated plan. Next slide, please. Next slide. Great. And so based on all of that community engagement and all the feedback that we received, these were the housing related priority needs that kind of rose to the top. One note I will make, workforce housing is included in here. It is actually not included in the draft plan. We decided just because most of these funds are for populations that don't necessarily fall within the workforce AMI income brackets, that is removed. But these were the housing related priority needs that kind of rose to the top. Unsurprisingly, affordable rental housing was first on everybody's list. In the survey that we conducted, the top 3 greatest housing needs were affordable rental housing at 30% AMI, affordable rental housing at 50%, and affordable rental housing at 80% AMI. So these are the priority needs that are reflected in the consolidated plan that then feed into the goals that then the different HUD funding programs feed into. I don't have a slide on it, but I will just mention today we are kicking off the public comment period for the draft consolidated plan. So you will probably, if you haven't already, receive an email with instructions on how to review the plan, where to send your feedback, and then how to participate in the public hearing, which again is Thursday, April 30th. And the public comment period will run from April 3rd today all the way through May 3rd of 2026. Once the public comment period closes, we will upload the plan into a system called IDIS and submit the plan before the May 15th deadline to HUD so that you all are able to receive your resources at the beginning of the next program year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Hopefully council has all had a chance to digest this and if possible, had completed a survey at some point in time or participated along the way. So it looks like we have a number of comments. Let's start with, I think Council Member Meehan, you were up first.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Interim Chair Farrell. I really appreciate the engagement with the community. I feel like that's an area that we really need to focus on, not just for now, but then after we actually do some things. I like to hear what people how their experience has been, and so following up with some of those groups that have already been participating in these programs, it's really important to hear what the feedback is, the results of the work that we're doing. So I have not had a chance to participate, but I plan on participating, and hopefully we'll be able to be available for the hearing. I'm very excited about that. Thank you so much for your work.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Willard.
Thank you, Interim Chair Farrell. Sorry, I'm having trouble saying Interim Chair Farrell today.
I know, it's a
Uh,
mouthful.
yeah. Frankie, I just wanted to give you praise and let you know that I really, really appreciate the comprehensive and equity focused approach that you did by addressing all of these different people throughout the state to give you feedback. That's extremely important, and it's extremely important to make sure that our voices are heard. So I was very happy to be a part of this conversation, and I look forward to what the public comment's going to be on this second round. So thank you very much, Frankie. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Come on, you guys still have 5 more minutes. Somebody's got some comments and questions. Nope. All right. Well, Natasha, did you have anything remaining on your slate of items?
I think that is the end of our agenda for our Affordable Rental Housing Division. Really appreciate it. I think, again, there will be, there's other interest and opportunity that you would like to make sure to have. We can be sharing advisories most certainly, but let us know. And Glenn and Frankie are working that process through and represent community voice. So thank you.
Great. Director Bell, do you have any final closing comments for today?
No, nothing for today. I think we've had a lot of robust conversation, and so appreciate it. And Frankie, appreciate you being here and all of the work to make sure that we can capture the priorities and the needs of communities and make sure that we're ordering our plan accordingly. I think I would just offer, related to the consolidated plan, if and as the council is continuing to digest this information and also finding ways for you to participate in a way that is fit for you within the timeline that is set forth prior to submittal. If there's additional information that we can provide you individually or as a council, or if there's additional information on the secondary round of engagement, that would be helpful just to know if there's something new that's reflected or worth noting. Please let us know. We can make sure that we can get that in front of you, and it doesn't have to be through this forum if it is a follow-up. So name what you need and we'll be responsive to it.
All right, that's our charge. So with that, it was a really great meeting, so much good content. Thank you all for all your hard work and exciting things coming up. We'll look forward to the next meeting. And this meeting is now officially adjourned.